Welcome back to Third Man In. I'm Zack Phillips, and in tonight's post-game stream, we're going to be breaking down game number 46 of the Toronto Maple Leafs regular season, defeating the Winnipeg Jets 1-0 in overtime here. Congratulations to those of you out there who had an Ilya Samsonov shutout ticket. Myself here tonight will take that one. Huge night for Ilya Samsonov, so we'll talk about that. We'll talk about what went on in this game, what was good, what was bad, because yes, there was a win here tonight against the Jets, but let's be realistic here. There's a lot to take away from and say, that wasn't good, that can be built upon, but let's first and foremost start with this. 1-0 win in overtime. Austin Matthews buries yet another goal. Surprise, surprise. And on top of that, this team moves to 24-14-8. So, good night for Matthews to get on the board, and great night for a guy like Ilya Samsonov to gain some confidence back after he's come back, gone on a little bit of a run here now, got a couple of games under his belt where he's looked pretty good. He's helped the team to a couple of wins, and on top of that, Sheldon Keefe trusts him enough to go back to him on back-to-back games. Obviously, you get a couple of days in between, but you go Sunday night against the Kraken, pretty good game from him there. You go the Wednesday night here against the Jets at home. You got a couple of days before this next game. Who knows, potentially back in there again on Saturday night. I wouldn't mind seeing it, but you got a guy now who seems like he's figured things out, at least confidence-wise. I mean, you still see some stuff from him that you saw before that didn't look as great. We can't just deny that that's the case. Some of it a little bit of his movement, some of it a little bit of the frantic play, but I think it works for him when the confidence is there. He's a guy who can figure those things out and kind of make it work to his advantage. If you're going to be a little bit of a frantic goaltender, or you're going to be moving side to side quickly, or having to react or overreact, if that's how you want to call it, you got to have confidence. You got to trust yourself that you could do it. Before, it felt like he couldn't. Before, it felt like he thought that he couldn't. And ultimately, it ends up with a lot of pucks in the back of your net because you're overcommitting across one side. Now, all of a sudden, you think, I can't get back. You don't try as hard. You don't get it back as quick enough. And then it's not as great. But what we saw from him here tonight, this guy looked like he was a man on a mission, and that's what it's felt like we've seen out of him in the last couple of games that he's played, in the game against Calgary, the game against the Kraken on Sunday, and then into this game here tonight. Ilya Samsonov has been absolutely incredible over this last stretch. Again, we want to stay positive on this team, but I'm not going to sit here and pretend like, woe is the Leafs, everything's fine in Toronto, because there are still some concerns. First and foremost, Joseph Woll is going to have to come back at some point. You're going to have to make a decision on who's going to be the guy. Can you trust that Woll can stay healthy? Can you trust that he can play? And then the other part of this is, yeah, obviously Samsonov is playing incredible right now. We can be really happy with that. I love seeing that out of him. How long can this last? How long will this last? Could this potentially fall off a cliff? Was this just a bad start to the season? Where is this going to be? 10 games from now, after the All-Star break, who knows? But as for right now, the way Ilya Samsonov has played over the last couple of games, it feels like he's back. It feels like he's dialed in. And this seems to be kind of what we saw out of him last year to start the season. Last year into the playoffs. Last year in Game 6 and Game to close it out against the Tampa Bay Lightning to move on to play the Florida Panthers in the next round. The way that he has played over the last couple of games, it just feels like Samsonov is dialed in. It feels like that confidence issues, the trust issues amongst the team to him, it feels like it's kind of started to wither away. Ilya Samsonov has been incredible, and he deserves his flowers. He deserves all of the kudos for the incredible work that he's put in over the last little while in these last couple of games, because now we're going to get into a little bit of the darker side of things. The Leafs haven't been that great over the last couple of games, over the last stretch. Realistically, they haven't played that incredible of hockey, and it's not to say necessarily that they've played bad hockey. It's more just, this has been 500 team hockey, average middle of the road hockey. And then you get some good goaltending performances along the way from Samsonov here tonight, 32 saves. It's going to help you a lot because the guy's not letting anything in past them. So you have some of these brutal, egregious turnovers or errors where now all of a sudden the other team is going down on a 2-on-0 on your own power play. If you've got a guy with that mindset back there who's like, I'm not letting anything in, well, it's going to give you a much better chance to win. That's not necessarily a recipe for success long-term or in the Stanley Cup playoffs. So I don't think that this is something you should be banking on. Before we can continue into the rest of the team, we do have a super chat here, so let's get to that. man himself, Maxentius Decimus. Max, thank you again for the super chat. We do appreciate that here. I will fix up that top bar there so that your name does fit in there. But Max says, Sammy on that 2-0 literally shocked me. Yes, that was an incredible save. The first one, getting across on the backdoor save, then sliding back across again, kind of getting a stick on the first pass, the original pass that was made back across to Barron, and then making the next save again on Barron there. Samsonov played an incredible game here tonight. He looked sharp. He looked aware of where he was in the net, where his team was, kind of the next move that he had to make. He always felt a step ahead. He felt very confident in his reactions. Again, I can't speak to the goaltending too much. I was not a goaltender. I'm not a goaltender evaluator, but it's pretty easy to say when, like Max is saying there, a guy's following the puck well. You can tell. He was on top of it. Rebounds didn't feel like they were that egregious. It didn't feel that juicy. It didn't feel like every time Winnipeg got a shot that the second and the third and the fourth opportunities were that high danger, because it felt like Samsonov was the one taking them away. Maybe not necessarily the Leafs in front of him, but Samsonov at least had a really, really strong game here. Now, we do need to talk a little bit about what went on, especially with that 2-0 and what led to it after the fact, kind of the result of things with guys sitting, the results of the special teams. These Leafs special teams absolutely stink. They stink. This is a pathetic display of special teams that we're seeing from this team right now. This is where it blows my mind how we don't change something. And I'm not talking about trading for guys and bringing in Alex Ovechkin to play on this power play to change it. I'm talking about, why don't you put Bertuzzi in front of the net? Obviously here tonight he doesn't play. Okay, so bad example. But in general, Bertuzzi, why doesn't he go in front of the net? He was incredible in Boston on the power play last year. He was incredible in Detroit on their power play. He was that net front guy. Why can't you get to a point where you could make some changes? Start to switch things up. You look at the way that they play, you look at the production that you're getting out of them, it's very easy to tell that this team lacks urgency on these special teams. Now, I think part of what was wrong with the penalty kill earlier on, and I think it'll start to fix itself or correct as it rolls along, is that David Kampf did not start the season very well. I think that hurts a lot. Mitch Marner did not start the season very well. Those are two of your primary penalty killers. TJ Brodie did not start the season very well. Still, I mean, I'm not going to lie, has not played that well over the last little while, but he's on your penalty kill. He's one of your main penalty killers. And then on top of that, the most important guy on the penalty kill, because he's out there for the full 2 minutes of it every single time, is your goaltender. And Samsonov really did not play that well either. So just all encompassing of what had gone on, from goaltending to Marner's struggles to Camp struggles. It feels like both of those guys, even at least back to their defensive form, I feel like Marner and Camp, once those guys, your main penalty killers up front, can start to dial things in, it feels a little bit more clean. You can probably start to trust that penalty killing unit a little bit more, and you're not going to be as concerned. I also think that where it goes with the second unit coming out, they're really only killing like 30 to 45 seconds of it, because the first guys take up most of things. I'm not as worried about them. It's more TJ Brodie not being good. He's out there for a while. That's got to change. But again, the fact that you just won't change things, I can't understand it. And that's where it goes to the power play. I get where we're at with Craig saying there, the problem with taking JT off the power play is he wins a ton of faceoffs. Okay, that's fine. Guess what? You're also paying a guy $13.25 million for the next 5 years or whatever it is after this to be your number one centerman. If that guy can't win you draws, if your number one centerman can't win you draws, you've got another problem on your hands. Like, that guy's got to find ways to win. That guy's got to find ways to get things done. So he's got to be able to go out there. And then on top of that, you're going to put William Nylander out there. He's also a guy who can take draws. So I'm not as concerned about the fact that JT is the guy who can take faceoffs. It's a valid point, 100%, Craig. I'm not going to disagree with that, but I just think that you should be able to look at Matthews and say, dude, you're the number one center. Maybe let's win some draws here. We're paying you all this money. Let's win draws. I think you just have to make some changes. I think that it's a nice shakeup, maybe a bit of a wake-up call here as well, to put a different style player with those guys as well. I think that this power play kind of has hit a funk. They lack urgency, and it's the same thing that we've seen out of them over the past few seasons, where it's like, oh, they're so hot, and then it feels like they get into this mode where they're like, we're the Maple Leafs, we're going to put on the jersey tonight, and we're going to win this game. Now you're seeing it even into the minuscule aspects of the game. You put on the jersey and you're like, well, we're Austin Matthews, William Nylander, Mitch Marner. We're going to win this power play against your penalty kill. We're going to be able to dominate when it comes to this aspect of the game just because we are who we are. And sometimes it's like, well, that's not necessarily the case because those guys are busting their balls and those guys are giving everything they have every single time they step on the ice against you. So naturally, it's going to be a little bit more difficult for you guys to perform. I feel like there's a serious lack of urgency amongst these guys. I feel like they're not as dialed in as they need to be right now. And they just have a lot of sloppiness that they need to clean up. And as much as people might complain about Sheldon Keefe doing what he did and sitting them, I think that's the right move. Look, they haven't been good enough. In the playoffs, it's a different story as well. I want to clarify this because I got into an argument with someone online about this, and I still stand by it. I think they're 100% wrong. And it's like, oh, well, if you take away playing time from Matthews and Marner, you're just going to lose games or whatever. It's like, well, in an 82 regular season, realistically, who gives a fuck? Like, maybe you give up an opportunity or you don't score in the power play once in a while. But, like, that can also send a message to them because they start to get to a point where they get complacent. They're like, well, I can go out there and have sloppy zone entries. I could have sloppy drop passes and not pay attention to where guys are. And we waste off an entire power play. And it doesn't matter because I'm going to go back out for the next one. And Sheldon Keefe said, no, you're not. You do that stupidity. You turn over the pucks at the blue lines. You make bad changes, like Matthews going off for the change there. It goes for a 2-1-0 back the other way. You do these kinds of things, it's going to cost us. You got lucky that Samsonov was absolutely out of his mind here tonight. It saves you. Making 2-2-0 saves on a penalty kill. So we can say what we want about Keefe. That decision to not let them go back out there for the next power play, it's the right one. Send a message to them. And again, you know what you probably have to do tomorrow morning in your meeting? Show them the tape and say, this is unacceptable. This level of play is unacceptable. This lack of detail is unacceptable. For you to be making as much money as you are, you cannot be performing at that level. And it's not even just about did you or did you not perform tonight. It's, did you pay attention to detail? Were you playing with a sense of urgency? Like, some nights aren't going to be your night. You're not going to have the best night of your career every single night. But you can at least show up. You can bring effort. You can bring energy. You can bring intensity. You can try your best to do the small things in the game. You can try your best to achieve those. Every time you go out on the ice, is the puck going in the corner? Am I finishing a check? Am I committing to get the puck out of the zone? Am I winning draws? Like, those are little things that you can be trying to do, even if you're not going to be dominating offensively. Do the little things. There's a lot of times that you can look at this group and honestly come away from a shift and be like, you're not doing those things. You're not excelling at the small things that you should be. And I think that this was perfectly acceptable for Sheldon Keefe to put them on the bench after that. Send a message. It's fine. It's fine. It's game 46 of the regular season. If there's ever a time to sit these guys down and say what you just did is not acceptable, it's right now. That's fine. Calle Jarnkrok and that second unit can hold their own out there for 2 minutes. Maybe they're not going to be as good as Austin Matthews, Nylander, and Marner, but they can hold their own. That's kind of where I'm at when it comes to the benching of these guys. I wanted to get that out of the way. The way that this unit has been playing over the last little while, I think there's a lot of things that go into it. And this is kind of the final piece I'll have on the special teams and stuff before we continue on. But they lack urgency right now. It feels like the system that they have in place it's too done up. And what I mean by that is it feels like they go into the game being like they have these perfect plays that have to be run, which are fine to have incorporated on your power play. But it's also like, this isn't the NBA, this isn't lacrosse, where every single time you're having a possession, you can be setting up these plays. Sometimes it just comes to moving the puck quickly, finding open space, getting good chances, and being in front of the net. I know that that's a, like, whatever, caveman take, whatever, old man yelling at clouds take. I understand that, but I'm not really talking about this in terms of long term, because when you look at the Oilers, you can see the way that their power play runs. You can see a lot of plays within it. I watch certain power plays like Colorado, the way that they attack the net and attack the offensive zone. But it feels like right now, these guys just need to kind of like snap out of it and just be told to go out there and play freely. You are all-stars. Pretty much every single one of you that are on this power play, other than John Tavares, is going to the All-Star game. You are some of the best players in the NHL from an offensive standpoint. Like, that's undeniable. You've got guys who are putting up 40, 30, 100 points, or almost 100 points, whatever. You've got defensemen who are in Norris conversations, and it's not because of their defensive play. So just go out there and play loose on the power play. Like, move the puck, use your talent to your advantage, and just enjoy it almost. I don't know. It's a stupid, simple take, and I get that, but it's just like, have fun. You're overthinking this. You're overdoing things where it's like everything feels forced. Move the puck fast. Get opportunities. Don't hold on to the puck forever. And just do it with a sense of urgency. Like, actually care about what you're doing every single time you go out there, because otherwise it's just a waste of 2 minutes. It's just a waste. All right. That's enough for the special teams, I think, unless there's more questions in here. If you guys have them, I'll answer them throughout the rest of the show about the special teams. If anyone wants to call into the show here tonight, please send a message to me via Discord. You can send it on Twitter as well, at Zack Phil, ZackPhill. You can send me a message on there. You can send me a message on Instagram if that's your preferred way to do it, or if you have that, or if it's easier, whatever. If you want to call into the show here tonight, please send me a message. I'll give you guys the link to call in. You let me know your thoughts, ask questions, whatever it is. I'm happy to hear. I'm happy to talk to you guys. I want to know what's going on with Leafs fans and your thoughts on tonight's game and where things are at with Samsonov, with Matthews. 39 goals now for Austin Matthews. It's absurd. It's absurd what he's up to. I also want to hear about the defense, True Living. And as we get closer and closer to the trade deadline, I want to know what you guys are thinking about what this team should do. I have my opinions. I don't know if people are ready to get into them. We've talked about it a little bit on Sunday night. I think I talked about it during the stream on Saturday. I want to hear from you guys. If you want to call in, please call in. And no, I do not have a Discord set up for the third man in, but I do have my own personal Discord. So if you've got me on there, shoot me a message. I'm happy to hear from people. Before we continue on, before we break down the rest of what happened here tonight, the rest of what's going on with this team, I do want to remind everybody to please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications if you haven't already. We recently hit 1,000 subscribers. I'm not stopping there. We had the other channel up to 5,000. We want to get this thing back to that point. Let's continue to get it up. I want to get to 2,000 and above by playoff time this year. 2,000 by playoffs. We're at game 46. We're about halfway through this season. I'm going to continue to put out videos, continue to do watch-alongs, post-game streams, all that good stuff. But hit that like button, subscribe here to the channel, and let's run it up. I want to see 2K here. 2K subscribers by playoffs. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications. Thanks to everyone who continues to support. I do appreciate it. Let's talk about the defense. Before we even dig into this, really, I'm going to clarify my opinion. For those of you who are new to the channel, for those of you who are new to me, whatever it might be, if you found me over the last little while, I think True Living made some mistakes in the offseason. 100%. I do not think it is fair to blame the defense of this team on Brad True Living. When I look at these guys, this is mostly built by Kyle Dubas. Mind you, Morgan Riley was here before, but Dubas extends him. Giordano is traded for and extended by Dubas. Brodie signed by Dubas. Liljegren extended by Dubas. McCabe traded for by Dubas. Timmins traded for and signed by Dubas. Most of these guys that are here right now, from a defensive perspective, were brought in by Tree Living. Okay? Klingberg was a mistake, but he is gone now. Simone Benoit and Lagesson were both brought here. Were both brought here by Tree Living this offseason, and they've both been hits. Benoit 100% deserves a spot in this lineup. When people asking like, where is Lagesson? What's going on with Lagesson? I think that these guys view them as Benoit and Lagesson being kind of those two pieces there that are interchangeable, could swap in and out. Benoit's the one who's been the guy who's earned his spot, and he deserves to stay. He has been a very good signing. You can look at his defensive metrics when it goes back to Anaheim, but even if you're into player cards and you're into the player analytics, individual numbers, all that kind of stuff, one thing you can look at is some of the cards that Jay Fresh had put out when he was with Anaheim and kind of just explain, like, you have to understand the exposure that he was given when he was in that role. He's playing in Anaheim on one of the worst teams in the league with John Gibson, who was not playing that well at that point. They weren't getting very good goaltending. Plus, their team defensively was not great. Their structure was not great. The coaching was not great. Like, everything about that situation was just really not great or conducive to putting up good defensive analytics for a single player in that system. Not to say that his would have been drastically higher elsewhere, but just when people signed him, or when we signed him, people looked at it and said, these numbers are not good enough. Where he's at analytically, it's not good enough. If you're on a much better team with better goaltending and better guys in front of you and a better system than what you were playing on, even just compared to before, your numbers are probably just going to naturally go up. Feels like here he's got confidence. The coach trusts him. The team trusts him. The team really likes him. His D partner, Jake McCabe, trusts him because now you're seeing McCabe playing a whole lot better when they play together as well. I think you see a massive confidence boost in these guys, and it just kind of starts to pump up your game. The better you're playing, the more your partner trusts you, the more you start to trust each other. The more your partner trusts you, the more confident you feel in yourself because you're not doubting things, being like, does that guy think I'm an idiot? Does that guy think I'm going to turn over the puck or make a mistake here? You're good. You trust each other, and it just rises. Everything rises together. So I think that that's a good signing. Here's the problem. I don't think that this team as a whole is bad defensively. I don't think that this defense group, though, is what can take you to win a Stanley Cup. I think that that's a difference. If you were to look at this team, I don't think you can call them bad relative defensively. They put up pretty good underlying metrics. They don't get their teeth kicked in really when it comes to some of the expected goals against and things like that. Like, they're not terrible. Not the best, but not terrible. A lot of it is what goes on elsewhere, which I'll get to. But part of the problem is that there is a lack of attention to detail that I think starts with coaching and accountability. It's what I talked about with the special teams. It's what I talked about with the power play. It's what I talked about with the penalty kill. I think some of those things combining together put you in a bad spot where you can play an average defensive game and then massive error puck in the back of your net. You're sitting here going, oh my God. Some of it too, The way you play offensively can really trigger things defensively. There are times where there are stupid decisions that are made in neutral zones, at opposing blue lines, in the offensive zone when it comes to trying to keep the puck in or possessing it, where these things come around and bite you in the ass because now they're going back the other way. And now you have a high danger chance against because you've got a 2-on-1 or a 2-on-0 or breakaways or whatever, because the way you play offensively is killing you defensively. Feels like they kind of lack structure at times, or they can get confused within the structure. But it feels like these are more breakdowns that happen than it being a constant issue, if that makes sense. It's just like it was constant failure to make a basic play. Yeah, it's just like it feels like this is not an overwhelming issue where you're always getting your teeth kicked in on defense. But it's like, okay, you're good. And then massive brain fart. You forget that you have so-and-so that you're supposed to pick up and he's wide open backdoor. And then you're like, wow, this team sucks defensively. Well, okay. I don't think that they suck defensively. I think that they could be a lot better. I think that you can improve and should improve on the defense if you want to win a Stanley Cup. But that's kind of where I'm at with the D. My main concern with this D as well is TJ Brodie. Playing the minutes that he's playing against the matchups that he is, getting the exposure that he is. It's very concerning to me. Look, you have to be empathetic towards the situation that's going on in Brodie's personal life. That's very obviously playing a factor. I hope everything is okay for him, for his life moving forward, his personal life, his family life, all that kind of stuff. That being said, we've talked about on this show for the last year and a little bit that TJ Brodie's kind of been slowly declining. When it got to the playoffs last year, we basically all had a very similar takeaway of like, TJ Brodie was very bad in these playoffs. Then we find out obviously some stuff going on in his personal life. And again, I do not want to... This plays a factor, so I don't want to be way too harsh on him. But when it comes to his level of play on the ice, it's just not being there. And it feels like what's going on off the ice for him has hit him a million times harder on the ice. And it feels like it's brought it back down even further than it probably should have originally. He struggled over the last little while, and you got to feel for him, but it's really hurting this team right now because he's making $5.5 million for the remainder of this year. You've got to imagine that he won't be here in the future, but it's really hurting this team, and for him to be playing the minutes that he's playing alongside Morgan Rielly, I think is not ideal for Rielly long term, and I don't think it's ideal for this team. And the other point that Gord had brought up there is he's not been good in the past 3 playoffs. I agree with that. He's been on the ice for some very crucial moments against. He's had some very bad defensive lapses, and when you're looking at those where you were looking at seasons that weren't that bad and then they turn into worse playoffs where all of a sudden he falls off in the playoffs, now you're looking at this year that's been really bad for him. Where do you think that this goes come playoff time? Like, how do you think this transpires for him? Again, it feels shitty to talk about. I'm not going to lie to you, because from the perspective of what's going on off the ice, there are things bigger than hockey. And I cannot fault him for that at all. That being said, with us here on the show and what we're breaking down and what's going on, you do have to be realistic about at least the level of play. And right now, it's just not being there. I do see a comment there. Hopefully a break, week off. Michael Kirkpatrick, Hopefully the week off, the break, helps Gio, helps Brodie, and JT get recharged. I hope so too. But then I think that you should also probably look at how you can handle these guys down the stretch. You're going to have, 30-ish games to go down the stretch after the All-Star game. You get this break. Maybe you just try your best. Gio doesn't play in some of these back-to-backs. Gio's getting breaks here and there. Maybe that's what you got to do with JT. That's what you got to do to preserve him. That's what you got to do to keep his legs under him. Maybe that's what you got to do with Brodie. It's not about the regular season here, guys, right? It's about the playoffs. And if you can't survive with one of those guys in your lineup, then you were never going to have success anyways. I think that that's the reality. I think that for me, if I'm going to look at this team and say, if you can't go 3 games without John Tavares, you have no shot at winning anyways. If you can't go 3 games without TJ Brodie, you're going to have no shot at winning anyways. So let them take breaks. Let them reset. Let them recharge. Let them get their legs under them. Let them get back into the rhythm of it in practices after this break. And then you can start to develop something as you get to the point where you're going to get to the playoffs. And then that's where the toll is going to take on you, where you're going to have to play more demanding minutes, longer minutes, or longer shifts kind of thing, where you're going to be battling and tougher shifts. And then you're going to transition that into playing more frequently in a tougher environment, in tougher games, in more physical games, more demanding games. That's where it's most important. Now, all of this is to say kind of where I was going with the trade deadline stuff. I said it before. I'm going to say it again. It's a massive debate on Twitter right now. It's a massive debate online. I know that people are going to be fairly divided on it. We saw Elliot Friedman kind of speculating about where he was at of his thoughts on if this team would or should make some moves at the deadline, and if they're contemplating the fact that they might not. I'm going to be honest with you. I might be in the minority here. If I am, tell me in the chat. If I'm not, like the stream, please. Subscribe to the channel too. If I'm not, let me know. If I am, let me know as well. I don't think that they should make changes. I think that the way that this group has played to this point in the year, I think that the way that you see some of these things develop, like even in this win here tonight, yes, it's great to get the win. It's nice to have a 1-0 game against this Winnipeg team. The issue to me is like, yeah, this is a 1-0 game, and there's 2 main stories here tonight. 1, Samsonov gets a shutout, incredible. 2, your power play still stinks. To be at game 46 with this group and being like, yeah, this power play has issues. This power play has had issues every year that they've gone to the playoffs. The power play has had issues down the stretch of a regular season every single year going into those playoffs. It's happening earlier now, which maybe, who knows, maybe this is like, oh, you're facing some adversity on this earlier on. That's much better for you. It allows you more time to figure these things out. My only pushback on it is that you're now into year 8, and over the past 4 seasons that this has happened, you weren't able to figure it out. The other point of this is what Benning has now said in the chat. By doing nothing at the trade deadline, it sends a message to the team that they didn't earn it this year. That's the correct message. I agree. Maybe not to the entire extent of you don't deserve for us to push for the playoffs, but from this standpoint. You're going to be a playoff team. You think you're Stanley Cup contenders. You did not show us all year that you were worth doing anything for. You did not show us that you were worth trading our prospects, trading guys in the Marlies, trading active roster players like McMahon and Robertson or Holmberg. You didn't show us that you're worth trading these picks that we have to go out and get rental players to come to this team, because we don't trust you to make those trades worth it. So maybe you can go out and acquire a player who's actually a good player and would be helpful in the playoffs. But as Ben kind of says here, you also send the same message to the group of, we don't necessarily think that you guys have shown us enough to prove that you actually are capable of taking it to the next step, to the next level, and being able to actually compete when it comes to a Stanley Cup playoff run. Compete for 4 series, compete in a 7-game series, even first and foremost, to get to the second one. I think that there's guys like 6 1/3 is saying that need to pick it up. There's guys that need to start producing. There's guys that need to start doing their jobs. I feel like the message at the trade deadline is something that can be sent of like, we're not going to make these changes. We're going to leave it to this group in the room to show us how good you are. You all wanted to come back here. You demanded to come back here. You said you wanted to run it back. You all got your big contracts. Then why don't you show us that those contracts were worthwhile? Why don't you show us that we made the right decision in signing you guys long term? That we made the right decision in re-upping those and not going out and acquiring new players in the summer or ahead of this deadline here when you could have traded Nylander before his contract would have expired. You can kind of put this back on them to be like, up your level of play. You thought this is the right group. You thought you could get it done here. We brought you back. Sheldon Keefe, you wanted him here. We brought him back. Now it's on you. I know people might look at that as a bit of a tragic or ridiculous way to look at things. Here's the other thing to consider. What team last year made 0 moves at the NHL trade deadline? I'll give you a hint. They went to the Stanley Cup Finals. And I'm not saying it's the same thing, but the other thing is you could also kind of figure out who these guys are in that room. You make a trade at the deadline, it kind of lets them off the hook. Like, oh yeah, we'll help you out. And then they lose. And then it's like, well, whatever. We'll run it back next year. We think we can do it. We're close. You don't make a trade at the deadline. Do they get pissed off? Do they get hungry like Florida and they say, we've got the guys in this room? Do they get hungry and say, we're going to go on a run? We're going to make the playoffs. We're going to dig down deep. We're going to make a push. We're going to show that the team that you actually constructed by going out and getting Matthew Tkachuk is a worthwhile team to have here. Can you show us that you have that? And then on top of that, you could find out the complete opposite. Maybe they wilt away and say, why didn't you get us help? Why didn't you go out and trade for guys? Why didn't you add to this team? And if that's the case, you're probably never winning with those guys anyways, because they just don't have the mentality and the attitude within them. So I think that this is one of those years where you just have a quiet deadline. You're not getting the Ryan O'Reillys and Acharis and Jake McCabe's this year. You're just not. There's no point of spending these assets on rental players or short-term players to come into this team and join this group where you're going to be mortgaging futures when you need those pieces, because that's kind of the final part. That's the final thing that I look at when it comes to these guys is this. One thing Pittsburgh always had to do, because they have these high-end players that they always kept around, with Malkin, Fleury before he was moved on from, Crosby, Letang, was that they had to filter in young talent around them who were cheap players on ELCs or on a couple $1 million deals that you could put in around these guys because they were coming up, they were young, and they were hungry. You're going to have to start to find some more of those here. And if you keep trading away picks in rounds 1 through 5, 1 through 3, 1 through 5, you're not going to have that great of an opportunity to get those guys. Yeah, you could hit on them in round 6. You could hit on them in round 7. But let's be realistic. The frequency of which you're going to do so is still not that high. It's not that they don't exist. It's just much harder to do. I think a quiet deadline is the ideal way to go about this year. I just do. I think that it sends a message. You get to learn about this team a lot more. You kind of can protect yourself in terms of going forward in the future. I feel like this is the best opportunity to put these guys to the test and say, what the hell are you? Because you're not making changes at goalie. You're going to struggle to make some massive moves up front anyways. The most that you're going to be looking for is a change on the defensive side. And realistically, to me, I don't think that you can actually get the piece that you need that's going to make the change it needs to make at the deadline. Like your Devon Taves and your Brandon Montour and stuff, they're not really coming around at the deadline. It's nice to be able to get a Jake McKay, but you kind of swung and got lucky on that one. Some of these guys are easier to trade for or more available when it comes to the summer. I think that's just the reality of the league, the hard cap, and how these GMs operate. So I think that's the best way to approach it. All right, we did hit 50 likes here. I appreciate everyone who hit that like button. Thank you guys so much. Thank you for the support. Now, as always, for everyone who knows, when you get 50, when we get 100, when we get 150, 200, 250, 300, which we've got here before, every set of 50, bring out the smelling salts. I appreciate everyone who's hit that like button already, but if you haven't, continue to hit it because about half the people watching have hit it. Here's the smelling salts. Thank you guys so much for the support. Let's get it done. All right. There we go. Hit that like button. Subscribe here to the channel. Super chat here we'll get to. All right. Michael, thank you for the super chat as always. We do greatly appreciate that here. We appreciate all the support, all the likes, subscribes, all that. Michael says, Zach, it's been 8 years. The core are who have high skills but without a killer instinct. They don't have DNA, especially a quiet captain, and Mitch's attitude. I mean, yeah, it kind of goes to what I was just saying, though, right? In terms of what you're going to do at the deadline is you're basically saying, like, who are you? Because we bring in all these insulation pieces every single year at the deadline that you're looking at as like, oh, this guy's tough. He's got grit. He's got character. He's been there. He's done that. I loved those moves at the time, but it's like at some point, by the time you get to year 8, like Michael's saying there, you can basically start to determine you are who you are. I think everyone in the hockey world is fairly aware of the fact that this team is not really a gritty grind team that will break you down and can play these slow, tough defensive styles of hockey. They're just not that. So you're going to go into the playoffs and say, like, we're not going to give you these excuses of like, oh, these guys can do it. The way I would approach the deadline would be, can you do it? You brought in Bertuzzi. He's going to be a playoff guy. Let's be realistic. He's going to be. As much as we want to complain about his regular season point production, wait till we see him in the playoffs. I think even point production might not be there in the playoffs, and I'm fine with that as long as Bertuzzi plays like Tyler Bertuzzi, because he will be an effective playoff player who pisses people off. Max Domi, similar situation for me. I've been higher on the third line, I think, for most of this year than a lot of people have. Like, I don't mind them. I think that they've been one of the more effective offensive third lines in the league. And if you're going to look at these guys, you're not asking the third line to be the defensive shutdown group. You're not asking them to do that. That's what the fourth line is for. That's why you signed David Kampf to the money that you did to play fourth line minutes. It's because he penalty kills and he plays late game situations. He plays with a minute left, up by 1 goal, preserving leads. Like, you're putting David Kampf, Pontus Holmberg, and Bobby McMahon out on the ice, or Noah Gregor out on the ice to close these games out, because you're looking saying those are the defensively responsible guys. So your third line, I think, is fine. I think you're going to have these guys who are tough. You're going to have McCabe, Benoit, Giordano does it, Morgan Riley does it. I think you've got that. You're going to kind of have to look at these guys, the top guys, the four guys, and say, do you have the balls? Do you have the balls to do what it takes in the playoffs? Because every year it's kind of come down to, oh, well, someone else will handle it. And I think this can be one of those years where it's like, no. You handle it. You want to say you can win cups. You want to say you're going to do it here. You haven't been good enough all year. You haven't been good enough to this point to earn support. We're not going to make those moves. Now it's on you. I don't know. That's just kind of where I'm at with these guys. Seems like a lot of people hate Sheldon Keefe. I will say this. I don't know this for sure, but it seems more likely, especially with how things have gone here. If this team is to change the coach, this is brought up to me by some other people within the industry as well. Some other people who have connections or talk to people or know some things as well. It seems extremely unlikely that they would go out and bring in someone external during the season. Just based on the way that the Leafs have operated, the way the Leafs have kind of gone about these in-season hirings and firings under this organization. Think about Lou, gone. Dubas, who was the AGM, comes up and steps in. Think about Babcock, gone. Sheldon Keefe comes up and steps in. Even when you're looking at the system underneath them, it feels like everyone just kind of moves up the ladder and fills over and takes over the seat beside them. Not 100% to a T, but maybe for some more of the major transitions. That's how they've done things. Now, here's the other thing. You're at game 46. You've got Saturday's game. I think you have one more game next week after that before the All-Star break. Or 2 games maybe after that before the All-Star break. You're going to go into the All-Star break here now basically at 50 games. So you're going to have 30 so left after the fact. You're definitely not going to fire Keefe before the All-Star break. They're not going to want to deal with the headache publicly of having to deal with that in Toronto. Think about Matthews, Nylander, Marner, and Riley are going to have to go there, as well as Shanahan and Brad Treliving every single day in front of the media here in Toronto, while every media member from the entire hockey world is going to be here and asking about it. So they're not going to deal with that headache. If anything, they would deal with it after. But then by the time you do that, now everyone's coming back for their holiday vacations to Cancun, wherever else they're going here at this break. You think that they're going to bring in some new guy while all these guys are coming back and jumping back into the swing of things? Probably not. You're not going to shake things up. So if you're going to do anything, it will be from Guy Boucher moving over and taking it. And realistically, is that firing the bullet too early? Like, is that using it up too early and being like, you know what? We're going to use this now. We're going to make this move now. What if the message doesn't get sent? Are you going to do this again in the offseason? Guy Boucher isn't the guy. You're going to have to go find someone else. Are you going to be cornered into Guy Boucher being the guy? That's kind of my thought process on that. Where the coaching thing is, I don't think Sheldon Keefe gets fired during the season. I think that decision gets held until the end of the year. I think that there's issues with this. Part of me, I'm not going to lie to you, wonders if I wonder if it's the group that's here as well as much of an issue as he is. I just wonder if there's a lack of buy-in. I wonder if they don't listen to him. I wonder if his message has gotten stale. Where maybe he's got fine systems. Maybe he's got an exciting offense and a great power play and a great penalty kill and the best defense you've ever seen, but maybe these guys don't buy in because they're just not listening to him anymore. It's entirely possible. We don't know. We're not in that room, but it's entirely possible. Yeah, handshake line respect, bringing up a good point. The Milwaukee Bucks fired their coach with a winning record. They're 30-13. There you go. Okay. let's get to the final couple of things here before we wrap up the show tonight. I appreciate everyone who's participated in the chat, who's liked the stream, who's subscribed here to the channel. Thank you guys so much for the support. Thanks for everything you do. Let's get to the final couple of things. I mean, 6 1/3 saying you need to wake up and realize Keefe is going nowhere this season. I just spent the last 5 minutes talking about the fact that he's going nowhere this season. So where were you, 6? Thanks for coming out, buddy. Hit that like button, subscribe here to the channel. Let's get to our play of the game. Play of the game, very, very easy for me here tonight. There's only one. Ilya Samsonov, back-to-back saves on the 2-0. Makes the first save getting across, makes the second save getting across. Look, this team, I will be honest, you get out of this one with a 1-0 win, that's great. You give up 0 goals, you get Samsonov the shutout, you get the win here, you get a Matthews goal. It feels good. But this team stunk to start the game. They stunk. They're being outshot 10-1. Then you're looking at a period where I had written down they're being outshot 21-6 in the second period. Then it was like 22-6. Like, the power play stunk. They were the only ones getting opportunities. The penalty kill didn't even have to go out there and work yet because Winnipeg just wasn't getting any power plays. Samsonov makes that save in a game that it probably should have or could have had a couple more Jets goals, and it's shorthanded, and he makes back-to-back saves. Then the crowd starts chanting the Sammy chants. That felt like a good moment for the crowd, feels like a good moment for Samsonov, feels probably like a good moment for the team to gain some confidence back in him, what he could do, and where he could start to head moving forward. Happy for Samsonov there. I think that one is it because that also kind of swung things around. That was at the point where you're being outshot, whatever it was, 21-6 or 21-7 at that point in time, 22-7. Like, you are getting heavily outshot. Feels like Winnipeg's kind of taking it to you a little bit here in your barn without Scheifele, without Velarde, without Hellebuck in net as well, by the way. And yet, Samsonov makes those incredible saves. It feels like it gives this team some life. It feels like it gives them an opportunity. That's easily the play of the game for me. Shout out to Samsonov because he turned a game that you probably should have lost into a game that you win. That was a great game for him here tonight. Good for his confidence and those saves, man. Those are those are a couple of hell of a saves. Like, that was pretty impressive to watch. So shout out to Samsonov for this game here tonight. Wins you boys some money as well. So can't be upset with that either. But we have one more thing to get to before we can close out this stream tonight. I appreciate everyone who's tuned in. I appreciate everyone who's liked it and subscribed to the channel so far. If you haven't already, please, again, go and do that. Like, subscribe, turn on notifications. All that good stuff does help support the show. Let's get out of here with this one final thing. The grades of the game.
You want answers? I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth! You can't handle the truth!
Scott says, shot clock people were far off. Leafs had 4 shots in first period that didn't go on the clock. Deceptive to look at. Before I get to the grades, you guys can send yours in the chat here. I just want to look at what the shots were by period, because I don't remember that. Why is it so hard to look at, like, shots by period? Like, come on. Could ESPN not dial this one in a little bit more? Like, I just want to know what the hell happened in the first period, the second period, the third period. Like, hello? Maybe I got to go to a different app here. The Score. Looking at basketball scores before this. Also, by the way, the Leafs scoring that goal and winning in overtime kept their streak alive of not being shut out in games. long streak. Scott, I think it was. Leafs had 4 shots in the first period. The way that the shots are tracked is if it's a scoring opportunity that goes in between the posts. Like, that's how it's tracked as a shot. If it's off to the side, then I guess it's not a shot. It didn't really feel like to me that there was that many more shots, so I don't know. Max, thank you as well. I appreciate that. Grade of the game, and then I'll get to Michael's super chat here. The grade for me, yeah, also Mark, yes, 191 games, I think. I think it dates back to 2020 is when the last time that they got shut out was. Grade for me is, I'm going to go with a B. This is just like a mid-tier game that you didn't... Oh, man, I search up last time the Leafs, and then the first result is won the cup. Like, thanks, guy. The last time the Leafs were shut out was March 5th, 2020 against the LA Kings. They lost 1-0. There you go. That's a crazy stat for you. March 5th, 2020 was the last time. Okay. Grade for me is a B. The reason it's B is because you started off really shitty, but you got a lot out of Samsonov. You got a lot out of him here tonight. I think you gained his confidence back. You gain that level of play. You gain a little bit of momentum out of him. Hopefully we see him again on Saturday. I think we should, because he's got things rolling. Like, just parlay this. You got a good game out on Thursday. Okay, give him the break for Saturday, but then you go back in there on Sunday. Good game again on Sunday. Okay, now let's roll this over into Wednesday. A couple of days off, take a little bit of a break, take the net back over. Great game again on Wednesday. Get a shutout, get another win. Now let's roll this back into Saturday against Winnipeg again. I think that's the best way to do this. I'm happy with him. I think that was a great game. Penalty kill obviously did well there as well. You get put on it for the first time at the very end of the game with 3 minutes and 24 seconds left. When Nylander takes that penalty, you kill off a minute and a half because you had the overlap of 30 seconds. You kill that off. Then you take another penalty to close out the game with 30 seconds left. Kill off 30 seconds. You kill off that final 30 seconds. You go into the first minute and a half of overtime. You kill off it then when it's a 4-on-3. Like, to be able to continue to do that, hey, shout out the penalty kill. I think they're going to start to get back on track here, not be as bad as they were earlier on. Some of that, again, like I said, comes from goaltending. Some of it comes from Marner and Keefe playing better here as well. You need a lot more out of Brodie. Let's just call it what it is. The power play. Let's be real here, guys. Stunk like shit. It's lethargic. They lack urgency. They seem like they don't care. And I'm not saying they don't care. Like, they obviously care, but it's like there's no intensity. There's no passion in what goes on the ice. Like, they're like, oh, like, we didn't score. Like, it is what it is. Like, and you're like, okay, yeah. You don't have to be like taking it and crying on the bench and taking it way too hard every time, but you can also be pissed off at your play. Like, watch McDavid and Draisaitl and McKinnon and Crosby and Malkin and like Ovechkin and these guys. It's like they don't score. It's the end of the world. They're furious. They didn't do their job. These guys are like, oh, we'll have another one. It's like, okay, well, that's great, but maybe up it a little bit here. I think the penalty kill is missing that a bit. And let's be real here. This Jets team, they're missing some guys. You lost Morrissey during the game. You didn't go into the game with Scheifele. You didn't go into the game with Velarde. Like, you're missing a couple of pieces. Hellebuck wasn't in net either. I think that you get a full, healthy Winnipeg team. This might have gone the other way. You can only play who you play. You found a way to get the win. It's just like an okay game. Like, Samsonov really brings this number up for me, or this grade up for me, to get it to the B. That's kind of where I'm at. I appreciate everyone who tuned in here tonight. We do have one more super chat before we can get out of here as well. Michael, thank you for the super chat. As always, appreciate it. Michael says, Shanahan needs to be held accountable for the moves in the summer. Might for the purpose of signing 34. However, they need to fix it to build a core who play hard. Or who are hard to play. I mean, I think that you can be held accountable for some of the moves that were made in the past, or for some of the lack of moves that were made in the past. But, like, you're always going to sign Matthews. That, to me, was a no-brainer. You're not going to not sign a guy who's going to score 70 goals. That would be insane. If that's what his market value is, then that's what his market value is. Because guess what? Every single team out there would have paid him what he got and probably more. In terms of fixing it to build a core who are harder to play, I think 34 is the bad example to bring out there. Matthews is a guy who 100% deserves to be signed. Michael says, Zach, I checked. They can still trade 88 this season. They can't. They said that during the contract that his no trade extended to the season. Like, he can't be traded. That's it. It's done. He's a Leaf for life. I also missed this super chat as well. I'm going to get to it. I forgot. I apologize. CD Corn with the super chat. I missed this one earlier. I apologize, CD Corn. Thank you very much for the super chat as always. CD saying, edible tonight, Zach. Break out the vodka crayons. You have yourself a night, CD Corn. I envy you. I got to work tomorrow. I got to be up on camera tomorrow. If you guys are interested in sports betting, you guys are interested in some more analytical approaches to hockey and all that stuff, Edgework, the Edgework YouTube channel, please check that out. I'll send the link in the chat right now. Subscribe. I host that show. If you want more of me, I don't know why you would. Actually, I shouldn't say that because I'm telling you guys to subscribe to all my stuff. But if you want more of me, head on over to the Edgework YouTube channel. I host Monday through Friday. We have different NHL analysts on every single day, breaking down games, talking about what's going on around the league, talking about some of the biggest stories that are happening as well. And then these guys give out bets. So if that's something you guys want to do, check that out Monday through Friday, 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time. Please head on over there. Help support me. It does help support. Hit the subscribe button on that channel. Turn on notifications so you get notified tomorrow morning when we go live. But the Edgework YouTube channel, go check that out. Some of the guys who participate in the chat here, they come over from there. They watch it on there. Or, on top of that, they participate in the chat over here, and it's the analysts from that show coming on over as well. So make sure to check that out, please. I do appreciate that. Thanks to everyone who tuned in here tonight. That'll do it for tonight's show. Going to wrap it up there. That'll be game 46 of the Toronto Maple Leafs regular season, defeating the Winnipeg Jets 1-0 here, moving to 24, 14, and 8 on the year. Thanks to everyone who tuned in. Hopefully you all have a good night. Look forward to seeing you soon. Keep leading.